everybody, we are back with another review from the 2022 Emtb Shootout. Today, we're gonna be taking a look at the Santa Cruz Heckler CC.
Give me a high five!
He doesn't know that, Joe.
America!
This is a bike that we were testing in our trail category, which means it has 155 millimeters or less of rear wheel travel. Next up, we'll be moving into the enduro category bikes, which are 160 rear travel and more. So make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for those as we build up to our grand finale episode. So today I have my new twin sons here, Robert and Ryan. And before we get into how this bike performs, we're gonna go over some of the specs and geo and see how this thing did on the trail. So the Carbon Heckler CC is a 160 front, 150 rear travel bike. It is a mullet setup, which means a 27.5-inch rear wheel and a 29 up front. This particular model has a Fox Factory 36 fork up front and a RockShox Super Deluxe Ultimate rear shock. It has reserve wheels with a reserve DH out back and a reserve 30 up front. I think that's a smart call. Extra weight, you want that stiffness and strength on these things for sure. It has a Shimano EP8 drive unit with 85 Newton meters of torque and a 720 watt-hour battery. Geometry, we got a size large to test out. It has a 472 reach, 632 stack height, 446 mil chain stays, 1,253 millimeter wheelbase, and a 21 millimeter bottom bracket drop. 64.5 degree head tube angle, 76.4 degrees on the seat tube angle, and pretty capable and confident all around, I would say. Who wants to lead this one off? Let's talk, what do you want to talk about first? Climbing? We'll get to the fun stuff later?
Yeah.
Let's talk climbing.
It climbs okay. It's quite firm under power and it feels quite lively, and I think it hides the overall weight of it pretty well. But in terms of geometry, I think the overall it doesn't weight the front wheel quite as well as some others. So it means that on the steepest pitches, I think you've got to be a little bit more considerate of making sure your bars are weighted and keeping traction on that front wheel to stop it washing about. But all in all, it's not too bad on the way up, I don't think. It's not super firm to the point that it's uncomfortable.
A little firm off the top.
A little bit.
Yep, and then when you're kind of in the middle of a suspension, it felt pretty good. But just off the top, you know, all those like cross roots and sharp rocks, you know, just you really felt them. You felt them and kind of felt that rear end, you know, little hang up, you know, a little bit on the climb. But okay to climb, I agree.
Rider position, geometry for like long days, big miles, which we
put
a lot of.
Felt great and comfortable on it.
A little bit on the small side for me.
For you, yeah, you're obviously a bit taller than us, but with a 472 reach, it is shorter than some of the bikes, but it's not the shortest by any means. I kind of liked how lively and playful it was. I think I do agree. I mean, I was able to climb some pretty awesome stuff on this bike. It did seem maybe a little bit tougher. Like I definitely had to get way up on the edge of the saddle or stand up more, right? Especially like compared to like the Trek, for example. I think overall though, the power delivery is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a little bit stiff off the top. You know, those kind of roots and washboards,
bounce
you feel
around
them,
a little bit. You just
and
feel them a bit more. Just kind of
and that transfers around to the downhill as well.
Yeah,
so
it does.
let's get to that. Or at least I thought it did.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. You know, just you know, getting into those corners or kind of consecutive hits and leaning the bike over, I felt the back end kind of like chatter and skip along, but then it'd catch. Or if I was over the front a bit more, the front end would kind of chatter a bit and then catch. So I just kind of felt like that. I didn't like wash out or anything like that. It eventually caught. It's just like that off the top initial hits. So, but you know, when you do point it straight and you kind of get into the travel, it felt great. Down rock gardens and felt stable. It was good to jump.
Robert, you spent quite a bit of time on this thing.
I did. I didn't really want to give it away. I think we need to talk about the first time that I got on it.
Okay.
We're riding a pretty flowy trail. A lot of good corners in it. some nice jumps, and I think I did about 3 times as many laps as any of you guys, just because it was so fun. It's got real nice supportive platform to push off of. Geometry's fairly agile, especially with a slightly shorter reach, and I think it just excels. Especially, I think the wheels are maybe on the stiff side a little bit, especially that back wheel, which feels great in the park when it's quite smooth and you're just wanting to push the corners hard.
Yeah, it's fast. It's a fast
good.
bike.
It is a fast bike.
But then you take it onto something slightly rougher, and I think it does start to suffer a little bit. It's not quite as sensitive off the top, and I think as a package it's quite a stiff bike, which has its pros and cons, of course.
Yeah, and I think Cole he liked this bike quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I know he liked it in the rock gardens as well. And I do think there's pros and cons to this bike for sure. And I think depending on where you ride and how extended or frequent your sections of very rough, chunky terrain are, it may not be an issue, right? Like if you know you've got a section, 3 sections of trail on your favorite downhill, and they're 40 to 80 feet long, maybe you can deal with that little bit of harshness, that little bit of hang up, compared to someone who, like, their whole trail network and all of their runs have tons of square edge bumps and roots and rocks. Because at that point, I felt like it was very hard to get momentum and speed built up if it was rough and chunky.
Yeah.
Like if you had a smooth bit of trail, like you came out of a corner and at least you had a little bit to get a few pedals or to pump, it would accelerate like a rocket ship. If you didn't have that and you were just constantly in the rough, it was a little harder to get that speed up.
I think it works the terrain real good. You've got like a real nice supportive platform that you can pump through, but if you don't have the momentum to start with to generate that speed, it does just suffer a little bit hanging up on you.
Where does this bike stack up, you think? I mean,
Top out of everything we've tested, for sure. It's the bike I'd take to the park, hands down, any day.
okay.
It's just super fun.
Playing Schraup and carving around, this is your favorite.
100%.
Yeah. It looked it. Every time you got on this bike, I mean, every little bit of weeds and ivy on the side of the trail were in danger. All right. So that being said, ideal consumer, you think it sounds like is going to be the rider who wants to play, bop around, find side hits, jump lines.
Yeah, or just slightly smoother terrain as a general trail center crusher. It'd do a pretty good job too.
All right, Frenchie, what are your thoughts?
Well, if you're the kind of person who likes that soft, supple, off the top feeling, like in the rock gardens and stuff like that, this might not be the bike for you. I ride a lot of like chunky, rocky terrain, and I wouldn't bring this bike. So, like you'd kind of said, you know, be more like man-made trails, you know, rock gardens a bit further apart, and you know, little
jumps, berms, quick corners.
Yeah,
it definitely is fun.
Yeah,
but yeah,
freaking fast. But it's just not for me, you know, in the really rocky rock gardens and routes that we kind of like to ride. So
I think I would agree with you. Frenchie and I, you know, both have deep roots in Southern California, and traction is scarce, rocks are plentiful. Finding bikes that have that supple kind of ability to stay planted on the ground when you need it to, but are still lively and poppy enough to get airtime in gap sections of sandstone and rock without feeling harsh or firm or decelerating are hard to come by, but that's our preferred setup, right? Robert's the total opposite end of the spectrum. I think if you live in an area like you said, man-made trail centers, pedal parks, if you live in a region that has more man-made features, or you like those smoother, bermy, flowy trails, tight little loamers with fast corners where you're doing cutties and stuff, absolute ripper. Like, this bike is so much fun.
Yep.
When you get it where it needs to be. I mean, like, period. Like, it absolutely rips in the right terrain.
Yeah.
But I think, again, for me and you, our weight and our type of riding style, I think it's not going to be ideal unless maybe you weigh a little bit more too, right? Maybe. I know we talked about some riders, once they kind of get it to a certain weight, can push through some of that initial roughness and stiffness. I do know that if you put this bike in the low mode, it will change that suspension kinematic just enough to make it a little bit softer, and it does get a little bit better. However, it makes the bike even lower, and we were already clipping some cranks and pedals on this thing a bit. So Yeah, so there you have it. That is the Santa Cruz Heckler CC. Overall, not a bike I think people would be bummed on owning. Like, very fun, very capable, but definitely favors shredders, smoother man-made trails, and people who want to have fun, find any side hit they can. Thank you guys very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we review each bike in our shootout individually before we get to that grand finale. So thank you guys again for watching, and we hope to see you out on the trails.